Keiki is a lonely, ugly loser who is desperate to find a girlfriend. However, everything changes for him when one of the school baddies begs to be his pet. But before this, Keiki wakes up from a weird dream covered in plots, only to find his sister, Mizuha, sharing his bed. Later in school, Keiki spends his class hours thinking about how lonely he is when his thoughts get interrupted by a text from the school president, Sayuki, asking him to come to the Shadow Club. Keiki goes to the club and helps Sayuki clean up the mess together with Yuka, Mayo, and Mizuha, and after going at it for hours, Keiki suggests the girls head home to rest while he finishes up. When Keiki is left alone in the room, he finds a love letter written to him together with a pair of white panties, and it seems like his lonely loser days are finally over. Keiki drags his buddy, Shoma, into his panty predicament and he teases him about finding his Cinderella, then suggests that Keiki's secret admirer is likely a club member. Keiki then resolves to find the idiot that left her underwear behind and heads back to the club for clues. He bumps into Sayuki in the hallway, and she notices the bags under his eyes have bags under them and asks if he would like to take a nap, but when he refuses, she says it's too bad since she was hoping to join him, then leaves. Next, he meets up with Yuka in the library and thanks her for helping with the cleaning. So she says she is happy to help and suddenly asks if he loves huge melons. This shocks Keiki, who wants to know why she is talking about melons in the library of all places. So she asks if joined the Shoto Club because of Sayuki's magical melons and confesses that she envies Sayuki's huge jugs. When Keiki shows that he might be attracted to Sayuki's jugs, Yuka gets angry and leaves him hanging onto a heavy book. Then she turns to leave and says girls are only mean to people they're interested in, leaving Keiki more confused. Later, while playing basketball, Shoma asks Keiki if there's any progress, but Keiki says that the girls both acted normally, and it could be either of them. Shoma then teases him about being popular with girls and Keiki acts like he is not enjoying it. Shoma asks Keiki why he behaves like a simp towards the girls and Keiki replies that he just likes to save them, like the shitty hero that he is.
That one there was a violation.
He then notices Mayo staring at Shoma, and his dumbass decides to stop in the middle of the game, causing him to catch the ball with his face and pass out. Later, he wakes up to find Mayo waiting for him and thanks her for staying, as she tries to check if he has a fever. But he catches her hand midair and they share an awkward moment. After she goes away, she asks if he was looking at someone he liked during the game, but he instead asks if she would support him if he had someone special, but she says no and leaves the room. Later, he sees Sayuki petting a dog, and when he asks for its name, she says she named it Vegetarian, which leaves Keiki worrying about her sanity. She then plays with the dog till the owner shows up and apologizes for losing it. Then she thanks them and walks off as she pets the dog. Sayuki stares at them with longing and says she envies them, making Keiki think she wants a dog. But she says she means something else. She then asks Keiki to pet her like he does for his sister. So he does, and she thanks him with a kiss on the cheek and walks away. Back at home, Keiki is still worried about who his anonymous letter sender is, so he asks Medusa if she knew who left the club room last, and she says it was Sayuki. Now convinced that Sayuki is the panty sender, Keiki decides to confront her. Later, he storms into the Shoto room armed with courage and confronts her about the letter and panties, and when she accuses him of being a cultured man, he's thankful it was all in his head. As he considers asking her out instead, Sayuki overhears him and agrees to go out with him. On their date, Sayuki thanks him for joining the Shoto Club, as it was on the verge of collapse, and no one else wanted to join despite her efforts. Then she asks if he regrets joining the club as he doesn't seem to be interested in Shoto. But when he says he is happy to work with her, Sayuki gets flustered. Keiki then asks if she has any special feelings for him, and she suddenly cusses and runs, making him wonder if she's really Cinderella. The next day, Sayuki continues to avoid him, making him sad, and when Mayo notices, she teaches him a way to get to girls who try to run and urges him to settle things with Sayuki. After school hours, he stalks Sayuki to a dark alley until he catches up to her and pulls a perfect wall slam, shocking both of them. She asks what he wants and he says that he knows her secret, which shocks her, so she asks how long he knew, and he tells her that he figured it out recently. Sayuki is surprised that he doesn't dislike her, so she asks him to meet up the next day to discuss something important. The next day, Keiki meets Sayuki as planned, and she asks him to close his eyes. When he opens them, Keiki's dreams come true as he finds her offering her huge plots and asking him to make her his pet.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
However, it soon becomes a nightmare when she explains that she wants him to own her, since she's a hardcore core woman of culture, and is desperate to be his slave, so he realizes that's why she envied the dog from earlier and turns her down flat.
No! No! No!
Later he meets with their teacher and she thanks him for cleaning the room, but complains that he left the door open, but he remembers locking it. Later, he tells Shoma about the situation and they realize that Cinderella must have snuck in to drop the letter, but had to hide from Keiki when he came back, and when he left, she opened the door from the inside, leaving it open as the teacher said. This meant that Cinderella could be any of the girls. When Shoma asks about Sayuki, Keiki says he wasn't able to find out if she's the panty planter, then asks if he's ever fantasized about making a girl his pet. Though Shoma admits to having a freaky side, he says he's not looking to be taken down by the FBI. He then encourages Keiki to investigate the other girls. Keiki returns to the classroom and thanks Mayo for her help, but when she almost flashes him some plot, her reaction makes Keiki think she might be Cinderella, but she pinches the thought out of him. Later, as he helps Yuika in the library, she runs off to return some late books, when Sayuki appears and tries to get freaky right in front of everyone. Yuika catches them getting chummy and warns Sayuki about her closeness with Kat. So Sayuki tells her they went on a date to really rub it in, which makes Yuika mad and she leaves them, calling Keiki an idiot. Later, Sayuki continues to pester Keiki and brings up the romantic wall slam, which Yuika overhears, making Kat even more frustrated. Sayuki finally leaves after finding a book on dog training, and then Yuika asks Keiki to take her on a date, as well if he wants to make her feel better. Back at home, Keiki plays with his favorite toy as he thinks about Yuika and worries about the date, so Mizuha hears him and decides to teach him some dating riz. On the date, Keiki follows Mizuha's teachings perfectly. First he went early, then he complimented Yuika's outfit and led her to a movie theater where he surprised her with the movie adaptation of her favorite book. Later, as they eat lunch, Yuika appreciates Keiki, but wants to know why he joined the library club when he doesn't enjoy it. Keiki explains that he did that to help out his friend, making Yuika appreciate his kindness. After lunch, they go on a window shopping spree as Keiki is too broke to buy anything, but Yuika doesn't mind. After shopping, Keiki confesses that this was his first real date, and Yuika acts excited about this but seems sad when she turns away. She then excuses herself to use the restroom. However, Yuika takes too long to return and Keiki decides to look for her. He then finds her being harassed by some losers and swoops in to save her hero style. Yuika apologizes for ruining the date, but Keiki blames himself for leaving her alone, and this makes her smile, so she plants a kiss on his forehead as a reward. They then leave for the station and she holds him close, hoping to give him a tour of her flat earth. On the bus, Yukia is asleep and Keiki looks at her, remembering how she was always alone because she looked different, but he had thought she was pretty and continued to annoy her every day till she gave up and spoke to him, worming his way into the friend zone. The next day in school, Shoma and Keiki discuss Yuika being Cinderella when Keiki receives a text from her asking to meet, so the boys are pretty sure he's going to get his confession. But when he meets up with her, Yuika starts to talk about how great she thinks he is before dropping the bomb on him, that she wants him to be her slave. Keiki wonders what water the girls are drinking in the school, but Yuika continues to pitch her offer, as she promises to give him a reward if he accepts and starts to take off her underwear. Keiki refuses her request since he's already got one of those for free, and this makes her mad, so she pushes him to the ground and shoves the panties into his mouth, then gets excited from his struggles until he passes out. The next day, Keiki wakes up to a nightmare and wants to skip school, claiming that he's sick, but Mizuha doesn't buy it and forces him to go. Back in school, Keiki thinks about the last Cinderella candidate, Mayo, as he opens his locker, but screams as he finds Yuka's a cup bra in there and another love letter, trying to convince him to give flat earthers a chance. He then confronts her and she explains that she just wanted to get his attention as she has not given up on making him her slave. Then she brings out her book and begins to read him her 50 Shades of Grey fanfic, making him sweat. He manages to escape from all that crazy and returns to his locker of doom, where he meets yet another present, this time from Sayuki, threatening him with a sus picture of them. He immediately runs to the club, only to meet Sayuki, dressed as an exotic maid with her hands handcuffed, begging to be disciplined by him, but Keiki's pretty much had it with her bullshit. She then begs him to unlock the handcuffs as she badly needs to pee, informing him that the keys accidentally slipped between her melons. After thinking about it, he decides this isn't how he wants to get a girl wet and agrees to help. Then he reaches for them and confirms that her earth is round. When she's free, she then complains that he has been avoiding her and all she wants is for him to use her any way he wants, which makes him battle with his inner demon, who even gets the angel on board. But Keiki stays strong and insists that he needs to be in love first and runs away at the speed of light.
Run.
He later catches up with Shoma, and they agree that Sayuki and Yuika couldn't possibly be the culprit, leaving just Mayo. Shoma tells him that he had caught Mayo staring at Keiki several times, but when Keiki turns to look at her, She glares at him and turns away. Later that day, Sayuki sends Keiki a text asking to meet in the Shoto room, but on his way to her, Yuika hijacks him and leads him into a room where she ties him up and demands that he kiss her foot and pledges loyalty to her, or she would steal his first kiss. However, Keiki's virgin lips are saved when Sayuki storms in and confronts Yuika, which ends up in a catfight over him. Just before they can split him in two, Meo comes to his rescue, saving him from the deranged girls who end up falling on their faces as they struggle to catch up with Mao. Once out of sight, Meo confronts him about being too nice to the girls and going on a date with Yuika, which makes Keiki ask why it bothers her so much, but she gets flustered and says she doesn't like it, confusing Cat Kate even more. The next day, Meo walks past Cat Kate and greets him coldly, so he tries to find out what's wrong, but is interrupted by the screeching voice of Yuika, who runs up to them, causing Mao to leave. Yuika notices and asks about it, but Keiki doesn't know what's up with her either. So she apologizes for going too far the last time, which he accepts, but she tells him that she has still not given up on him. As she leaves, she urges him to mend his relationship with Mao. Later, Keiki approaches Mao again as he sees her sleeping in the classroom, but a text from Sayuki interrupts him, and he goes to meet her. Sayuki seems to have started valuing common sense as she apologizes for how she acted with Yuika and says she just wants to be his obedient dog and not ruin his friendship with Mao, so she urges him to patch things up with her. Keiki then goes to find Mao, but she doesn't want to talk to him. But when he turns to leave, she confesses that she misses him and wants to hang out with him and Shoma. After school, they'd all hang out at the arcade and have fun, but suddenly, Keiki loses his balance and Shoma catches him like a main character of a K-drama.
Gay!
Which makes Mao excited as she takes pictures of them. After their hangout, Keiki walks Mao home, and she thanks him but complains that she is not satisfied and wants to be a couple, which makes Keiki shocked. But before he can respond, it starts raining and they run for cover. Under the shade, Mao asks if he has any interest in girls like Yuika and Sayuki, and when he says yes, she calls him a plot-obsessed animal, which starts a fight between them. But Keiki notices her shivering and goes to get her hot cocoa. Coming back, he sees her staring at a picture of Shoma and thinks she has a crush on him, but she denies it and runs away from him again. The next day, Emso continues to avoid him, which ruins his mood for most of the day as each of his friends notice and try to ask him about it, encouraging him not to give up. Later at home, Mizuha finally asks Keiki what's been going on, and while she rubs him slowly, he explains his issues with Mao. So she advises him to be patient and continue to be himself. The next day, Mao continues to avoid him, but he pursues her till she breaks down and blames him for all the sleep she's losing thinking about him. Keiki then apologizes to her and promises to do anything she wants just to get her to forgive him. After hearing this, Mao plucks up the courage and finally asks him to get into a relationship with Shoma, confirming his theory about the water the girls are drinking. Then she explains that she is a fujoshi, and she was writing a BL manga about he and Shoma and has even grown a following. Keiki gets angry and calls her out for using his private life as a manga and asks her to stop, but she refuses and threatens to make sure he never gets a girlfriend if he doesn't do as she wants. Later, she sits alone and sulks over how dense Keiki is, but says she can't blame him for her lack of courage. At the same time, Keiki walks towards his locker sad that Mao was also a crazy bitch, only to find another anonymous letter in his locker with a picture of him deep in Sayuki's melons. He reads the letter telling him to rush to the astronomy club or the picture would be exposed. Later, he goes to the Shoto club only to find Yuika wearing a bunny costume and hopping about with her pancake chest, failing to get any jiggle. Keiki is surprised but pleased, as Keiki's dream was to one day come across a bunny girl, so take several pictures since they'll last longer. When he asks why she's dressed that way, Sayuki explains that Yuika had to wear the costumes for a whole day before she can join the Shoto club. She enjoys teasing Yuika, but they both end up fighting about their melon sizes, creating new nicknames for themselves. Mao is surprisingly also in the room and says she would also love to join the club and has paid her dues to Sayuki. Keiki is curious about her compensation and realizes that Sayuki was a die-hard fan of Mao's manga, and Mao had used that to bribe her. Yuika gets curious about the book and Keiki tries to stop her, but Sayuki hands her the book encouraging her to read it. So Keiki watches in horror as Yuika gets sucked into the world of BL. Mao threatens Keiki not to expose the reason she joined or she would show her mind-sucking BL book to Mizuha. With the four of them in the club, he realized the Shoto Club was just a cover for all the girls to be cultured and proud. He then decides to visit the astronomy club as instructed by his newest anonymous letter, and on getting there he hears a voice from behind, freezing him on the spot. It turns out to be a real-life loli named Koharu, and she confesses to Keiki that she is in love and doesn't know how to get to him other than blackmailing him with a scandalous picture. Keiki, finally glad that he has found his panty-dropping Cinderella, immediately proposes marriage to her, but she pushes his ugly ass away and reveals her dedicated shrine for Shoma. She then confesses that the person she loves is Shoma, and she needs him to help her win Shoma over, using the scandalous picture as a threat. Later at lunch, the stalker yaps on about her obsession with Shoma, which bores Keiki, so he tells her that she didn't need his help as she is Shoma's type, as his friend is certainly into lolis. Koharu affirms that she is aware of her man's preferences and that she'll stick beside him, but the issue is that she is older than them, and this comes as a shock to Keiki because she looks like a young girl. Apart from the fact that she's an airhead, Keiki believes that her age would make the plan difficult as Shoma was into underage girls and should probably be in prison, but Koharu upholds the key to Keiki's dignity at this point, and he agrees to help her. Later, as he thinks about his current dilemma, Keiki sees his sister buying groceries and appreciates her by getting her ice cream. They then talk about the new members of the Shoto Club, and Keiki says he wants to quit the club, but Mizuha encourages him and tells him to continue. It is now the beginning of summer, and the students are to change to their summer uniforms, meaning that all grades will wear the same uniform, and this makes a light bulb switch on in Keiki's head. Later at school, he then introduces Koharu to Shoma as a first-year student, and as everyone wears the same color of skirt, Shoma can't tell that Koharu is his senior, and the only thing that shows the difference in grade is the ribbon, which Koharu successfully hid under her hoodie, caring less about dying from sunstroke. Keiki also makes her address Shoma as senpai, cementing the plan. Shoma is excited by how little she is making Keiki, glad that the plan was working as the both of them talk and even take pictures together. Koharu is so pleased and thanks Keiki for helping her out. Still, Keiki remains distracted as the question of why his Cinderella hasn't contacted Keiki lingers, and Koharu notices and offers to help him. She then listens to his tale, and they conclude that Cinderella could be any girl in the school since anyone could have walked in when he left, but he can't make them test the panties like a glass slipper, so he decides to look for any witness. First, he goes to the Shoto Club, but the weirdos that had taken over the Shoto Club are of no help, so he goes in search of his teacher, who mentioned earlier that he failed to lock the doors, Okita-sensei. However, on his way, fate intervenes as he bumps into the student council vice president, Fujimoto, who slips and falls, and Keiki dives to catch her, landing them in a comfortable position. He then tells her she can get up, but she seems to relish her position on top of him as she gives him a perfect arc, making Keiki completely shocked by her actions, and so he tries to get her to get up again, but she begs to stay with him for longer. Keiki later goes to see the teacher to ask if she saw any students leave the club room after the cleaning, and the teacher says she saw Fujimoto in the hallway. Keiki then sits in the garden and thinks about Fujimoto being the one who left him the letter and panties of torture. However, his thoughts are interrupted by Fujimoto appearing behind him, like causing him to scream like a character in a horror movie. She then tells him she was looking for him to repay his kindness of saving her, and offers him some chocolates that she made for him. Keiki takes a bite and thanks her for it, but says they have to be in class soon, and although she wants to stay with him longer, she does not want to miss class, so she hugs him and sprints off. Keiki then goes back to meet Koharu, his private detective, in the astronomy club, who had helped him take stalkerish pictures of Fujimoto and done a background check on her, and it turns out Fujimoto is just a plain weirdo with a knack for stalking. This makes Keiki wonder if Fujimoto is Cinderella, and Koharu reveals that Fujimoto is a Gap-mo, which is a calm and collected girl, until she pulls a weird blunder, breaking the perfect girl persona. Grateful for her help, Keiki thanks Koharu for her skills and apologizes for the slow progress in Shoma's matchmaking, but Koharu says she doesn't mind waiting for her Prince Charming to notice her. Later, armed with the info, Keiki struts to the Shoto Club room, thinking about the fact that meeting Fujimoto is harder than finding Nemo, and he meets Yuika alone as Sayuki and Mao are out. As he walks into the room, he falls into Yuika's trap, falling to his back like a cat getting belly rubs, and Yuika immediately climbs on him, straddling him. Yuika then starts to accuse Keiki of invading her dreams and demands that he take responsibility for aggressively massaging her flat chest in her dreams, as a slave should never act that way to their master. Keiki tries to argue that he's not her slave, but Yuika punishes him by massaging his plot points, making him cry out in pain. As he tries to push her away, his palm lands on her pancakes, and this sends her running away, accusing him of being a rom-com protagonist. Immediately, Fujimoto enters the Shoto room for an audit, and they both discuss her roles as the vice president, but she gets distracted and stares at the locker in the room for a while but doesn't respond when asked what is wrong. Then she tosses Keiki an invitation to volunteer for trash duty, and Keiki sees an opportunity to get to know her better, so he agrees to the garbage adventure. Observing from the shadows, Sayuki sees Fujimoto as an intruder, and so she decides to tag along for the trash collection mission the next day. She wastes no time throwing shade at Fujimoto, claiming Keiki as her master but disregarding Sayuki's plea not to go close to Keiki. Fujimoto moves closer to him and places his hands between her well-rounded melons, making Sayuki mad, so they have a melon showdown with Keiki caught in the middle. Sayuki, not to be outdone, slyly leads Keiki to a secluded spot and unleashes her inner canine as she starts licking him up like a dog marking its territory. And Keiki is left wondering if it could be the tap water causing the mania. Desperate to shake Sayuki off, Keiki recalls his father's sage advice on dealing with persistent dogs and channeling his inner Caesar Millan. He employs the special technique of aggressively massaging Sayuki's rice cakes. Sayuki, caught off guard by his aggressiveness, begs him to stop, but Keiki is on a mission and continues to give it to her till she climaxes. In a twist of events, Sayuki, instead of being horrified, finds Keiki's vigorous approach rather exciting and blushes with embarrassment as she leaves him. Once done with trash picking, Keiki finds someone's Playboy magazine, and Fujimoto teases him and falls into a river in the process. Keiki offers her his clothes after taking a full view of her body in the wet clothes like a creep, and Fujimoto thanks him as she sniffs them up. The next day, after some sports action, Shoma and Keiki cook up theories about Fujimoto possibly being Cinderella when they spot her in the hallway and go to say hi, but she bolts away, covering her nose as it seems they're emitting toxic fumes. Later, Fujimoto invites Keiki to the student council room, where she thanks him for the jacket by serving him some homemade apple pie, and tells him they will be alone in here. It's all sweet and romantic, and then she dozes off, leaving Keiki thinking he is finally having a moment without any perverted antics. As Keiki drifts into dreamland, he's abruptly awakened by Fujimoto attempting to make him extra comfortable by stripping off his underwear. Keiki is confused by her actions, and then she drops the bombshell that she has a smell fetish and has been low-key obsessed with his scent as she begs him to give her his underwear for sniffing purposes. Keiki, realizing that it wasn't a punchline to a weird joke, sadly accepts that he has stumbled upon another member of the cultured society. Later, Koharu reminisces about how she crossed paths with the man of her dreams, Shoma, and how he was the knight in shining armor who saved her life. Later, Shoma, Koharu, and Keiki go to eat in a fast food joint, but Shoma and Koharu act like new lovers, making Keiki feel like a third wheel. While Keiki is low-key happy that they're getting closer, he worries that Shoma might lose interest once he realizes Koharu isn't exactly underage, so he and Koharu plan a double date. But Keiki suddenly remembers that all the women in his life are high off tap water, as Yuka is too cute to be in the same space with Shoma. Fujimoto's scent-sniffing habits could make it awkward, and Mayo's protectiveness could be a problem, so he takes Sayuki instead. For the date, they go to a bowling alley, but Sayuki recognizes Koharu and is surprised to see her acting like a junior, making Keiki quickly explain everything to her, and she agrees to keep the secret. She, however, confesses that she's only there because her master told her to. As it turns out, the only future she has in sports is to be a spectator, but still suggests a penalty. Keiki hesitates, concerned for Sayuki, but she brushes it off like a know-it-all. Little does she know, Koharu is hiding a bowling prowess that could rival a seasoned pro, and as expected, Sayuki ends up with the face paint, and Shoma, the third winner, ends up at the mercy of the winner, Koharu. For her command, she asks him to let her call him by his name, and Shoma enjoys the moment. The date wraps up positively with Koharu on cloud 9 of the perfect day with Shoma, and the next day in school when Koharu and Keiki talk. She is grateful for Keiki's help and reveals that she has decided it's time to unveil her true feelings to Shoma, and was even wearing her lucky pink panties for courage. Keiki is scared for her, but allows her to do what she wants. Discarding the facade, she awaits Shoma after class and invites him to walk together, but Keiki is tense with concern and follows them. As Shoma and Koharu passed by a spot where they first met a year ago, when she got her straw hat stuck in a tree and he retreated for her. She confesses her feelings and reveals her true age, but Shoma is shocked and dumps her ass immediately, so she leaves crying. Keiki goes to talk to his dumb friend, Shoma, and Shoma reveals that he has also started to like her, but he couldn't help his special longings for cradle girls. Keiki goes to encourage Koharu and tries to make her happy, as Shoma walks in and pleads with Koharu to give him time and allow them to start as friends, but she refuses at first, wanting to torture him, but ends up accepting him as her friend. However, when Shoma switches on the light in the darkroom, he finds creepy photos of him showing the extent of Koharu's obsession with him, and he starts to doubt his decision to beg her. Keiki resumes his search for Cinderella, but he can't think of anyone since he ruled out Fujimoto and all the other girls. He is so deep in thought that he walks in on Mizuha showing plots and things get awkward between them. Later as they talk, Mizuha notices something is on his mind, and she offers to hear him out. So Keiki asks what she would do if he wanted a girl to be his pet, or if he became a girl's slave, or even starts collecting underwear or gets a girlfriend. All of Mizuha's answers are the same, which is to call the police, but in the end, she assures Keiki to support him if any of these happens. Soon, Sayuki rings the doorbell because she wants to see Keiki and apologizes for her behavior during the trash collection, blaming it on the fact that she was lacking attention from him. She says she wants to be cared for by Keiki. So he treats Sayuki like a dog and pets her belly, which makes Sayuki extremely happy to the point that she rewards him by suffocating him with her huge melons, but Meguzet enters, interrupting their movie. This makes Keiki call a family meeting to explain what happened, but he ends up making things worse. However, Sayuki leaves because she has had enough and Keiki asks her to find someone else to be her master, but she refuses, saying that only he is worthy. Then Yuka arrives feeling bored and decides to tame Keiki. She brings a bunny costume for this purpose and Keiki tries to refuse, but he is threatened with having Mizuha see his BL manga, so he has no choice but to comply. So Yuka takes photos of the embarrassing scene as she laughs like the evil witch that she is and decides to reward Keiki by giving him her favorite gift, her panties. He tries to stop her as he has seen enough panties to last him a lifetime, but Yuka falls on top of him, and Mizuha, with her perfect timing, enters the room, causing Keiki to call another emergency family meeting. As soon as Yuka leaves, Meo calls Kiki and tells him that she knows Sayuki and Yuka were there as she heard them talk about increasing their torture methods. And Meo says she would love to be there, but she has a deadline to beat. Then she hints at becoming his girlfriend and playing with his feelings once more before hanging up. Keiki has another talk with Mizuha as he helps her dry her hair, and she calls him a cultured man who is lucky to have the choice between being a master or a slave, but says her position as his younger sister is the best. Keiki returns to his room only to find that Cinderella's pants are missing. The next day, he meets up with Koharu and Shoma to know what could have happened, and they conclude that it could only mean Cinderella never intended to leave her pants in the first place, but at least he has narrowed down the suspects to Sayuki or Yuka, as they were the only ones who visited him that day. Later, Keiki visits the Shoto Club and meets only Sayuki there. He takes on a serious tone and asks her to become his slave, but she doesn't look surprised or ecstatic either, so he brings her out to an amusement park and tells her he will be her master for the rest of the day. Keiki demands absolute obedience from Sayuki for the rest of today, which makes her happy, and as they continue their date, he notices that she is very concerned about her skirt, and this makes Keiki think that she must be wearing the Cinderella pants and is trying to hide it from him. So he suggested that they take a few rides so that he has a chance to see underneath her skirt when the wind blows it up, but his plan fails. In one of the rides, Keiki commands her straight away to raise her skirt, but instead, she licks him, and this sends him running away. At the end of the day, they sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk. And despite Keiki not getting what he wants, he got to see another side of Sayuki, and even got somewhat closer to her. Sayuki also explains to Keiki why she chose him to be her master when he first joined the Shoto Club, as she had this feeling that he would be the only one who could accept her for who she is. While walking home, Keiki still notices her being very concerned about her skirt, so he decides to use his power over her and orders her to lift her skirt. She is very embarrassed by it, but she slowly lifts her skirt in the middle of the road, and to Keiki's shock, she's completely commando under her skirt, and he could see all the way to her rice cakes. Back at home, Keiki has a very normal sibling conversation as he asks her if she has ever gone out without panties, but Mizuha says no. The next day, it gets very awkward between Sayuki and Keiki in school as Sayuki starts acting nervous and apologizes for going out without wearing panties, as she admits that she realizes how uncomfortable it must have been for Keiki and promises to consider more appropriate attires in the future. However, despite saying all of this, Sayuki remains uncomfortable and nervous throughout the day as she remains in her corner and continuously writes patience on her scroll while giving weird glances to Keiki. Yuka notices this and tries to break her patience and make her jealous by getting closer and closer to Keiki to the point where she straddles him with her broomstick thighs. Sayuki has had enough and can't bear it anymore, so she immediately leaves the club room. Later that day, Keiki talks to Koharu and Shoma and they realize that Keiki might actually like Sayuki, which he denies and says he just wants her to be happy, so they advise him to talk to her and amend things. So he goes to her, and Sayuki complains that he was torturing her by being so close to Yuka, and she was jealous. She also confesses that the main reason she was angry was that he was acting like a bratty child and playing hard to get, which shocks Keiki. Angry that he had just been worried for nothing, he comes straight to her and asks if she stole underwear from his room, and she confesses to not only being a cultured woman but also an underwear-stealing thief. This makes Keiki think she was Cinderella, but when she lifts her skirt to reveal the underwear she stole, it turns out to be his boxers. He cancels Sayuki from the list as he figures she is just in need of serious help. On its way home, he sees Yuka waiting for the rain to stop and helps with his umbrella. And when they get to her house, she invites him in for some tea, as it seems he caught a cold. Inside her room, Keiki thinks it is wise to search through Yuka's clothes for the Cinderella panties, but is caught in the act and even captured on camera. Using the photo to blackmail his dumbass, Yuka makes Keiki accept to become her slave. In school the next day, Keiki starts obeying everything Yuka says, and Sayuki gets even more upset. However, Sayuki is aware that Keiki wouldn't submit in that manner unless he was being threatened, as he prefers large melons like hers. Yuka is also upset because her lemon-like breasts were brought into the conversation, so she tries to get Keiki to say that he likes them small, but Keiki stands on business and confirms that he prefers larger melons, but despite that, he would obey Yuka without complaining. Seeing how he's being treated like a dog, Sayuki decides to leave because she can't bear to witness her almighty master in that state. Back at home, Keiki is frustrated and reflects on his messed up life and can't wait to turn the tables on Yuka. So he continues to obey her, and the next day dressed as a butler to accompany Yuka shopping. After feeling embarrassed while walking around dressed as a butler, they arrive back home and Yuka goes to take a bath. Keiki is tempted to peek at her underwear again, but Yuka's girly screams takes him running to the bathroom, where he sees her completely naked and afraid of some spider. Yuka forcefully kicks him out and punishes him for his audacity to see her naked, but she also likes that he came to her rescue. After her tantrum, she places her head on his shoulder and asks him to stroke her gently, and she takes the opportunity to tell him about her grandmother, as she says that she loved her grandmother when she was a child and was always with her. But when her grandmother died, she felt disappointed and chose to isolate herself from the world. Being alone became more of a choice than a result of her classmates' discrimination, but Keiki kept talking to her despite her rejection and constant dismissals, and she explained that he was not the hero he thought he was, as in reality it was her who was waiting for him to always come to her. Because if she had wanted to distance herself, she could have simply stopped going to the library, and that's why he is very special to her. After their heart-to-heart talk, Yuka goes to get something to drink, but is still shaken, causing her to trip and fall. In an attempt to help her, Keiki notices that she has his boxers on her bed, so he interrogates her, and after forcing her to talk, Yuka confesses that she was also a thief, and this revelation freed him from his slavery. The next day was the last day of school, and Keiki and Shoma discussed their girl problems, as it seemed they only attracted weirdos. Shoma had found out that Koharu was basically Joe Goldberg, as she kept stacks on stacks of videos of him in her room and a book record of everything he does, making her a certified creep 12 days a week. Later in the hallway, Mayo meets up with Keiki and asks him to be her boyfriend, but turns out she just needs him to model for her sketch, as she said it was difficult to draw ugly losers like him. She later tells him that she got an offer to write one-shot comics and needs some inspiration, so she asks if he has a girlfriend now, and when he says no, she sits on his lap and attempts to kiss him, only to jump up and laugh at his ugly face. Later, he sees Fujimoto in the stairway, and she asks to sniff him to relax from a stressful day. She wants to date him and have a free subscription to his underwear, but Keiki is not excited with her proposal. She then hands him a free entry ticket to a swimming pool as a thank you, and Keiki goes to invite Shoma and Koharu, but they are busy making some plot. He then helps them pick the scattered pictures on the floor as they decline the offer to go to the pool. And incidentally, he finds a picture with a timestamp of the exact day Cinderella dropped her panties, and he believes he had found the culprit. But he has the perfect plan to reveal her. He decides to invite all members of the Soto Club to the pool immediately after school and includes his sister as well to use up the ticket. He gives them a swimsuit and they perform a runway show for him. From the pancakes to the huge melons, Sayuki and Yuka fight over who will be close to him, but he assures them that his sausage can go around. The girls have fun and Keiki goes to look for Mizuha, and he finds her in the indoor pool and carries her out because she had a cramp, and memories of him carrying her when she was younger come to her, making her happy. She then reveals that she found his BL manga and teases him about swimming that way. After, they meet Koharu, who tells them to join a love confession contest. Sayuki, Yuka, Mao, and Mizuba both give their confessions of love to Keiki, but the one that wins is Mizuba, as she confesses that she also loved Keikai. This opens Keiki's eyes, and he waits for her after the competition. She asks why he didn't leave with his friends, and he confesses that he wanted to discuss something important with her. He apologizes first, before he flips her skirt up, revealing that she was wearing the Cinderella panties. He says he knew she was the one, and he knew this was the perfect opportunity to catch her red-handed. He explains that he planned the emergency swimming hangout and brought the swimming clothes because he knew if she was the panty Cinderella, she would not want to hide it in the house and would carry it everywhere she went, and this would make her bring it for this outing and wear it after swimming with her swimwear. She wants to know how he figured it was her, and he explains that from the picture with the timestamp, he could see her, and the only reason she was in school at that time was that she was the Cinderella. Mizuba confesses finally and explains that she had always loved him, but Keiki says they are siblings and it would be another Alabama story. Mizuba points out that they are only 5 months apart in age, which means they can't be siblings, then apologizes, as she disvirgins his lips. The next morning, Keiki wakes up from a messed up dream, only for Mizuba to kiss him and continue the nightmare in real life. Keiki tries to tell her how kissing him is all shades of wrong, but she insists there's nothing wrong with kissing someone you're in love with. When she sees he's not getting on board, she reminds him that her melons are surprisingly large and ripe, then jumps on him to give him a sample. Keiki struggles to do the right thing, but he eventually pushes her off and decides to run away from home entirely. While he walked, he remembered his conversation with his dad, who confirmed they were not biological siblings, and was surprised he didn't remember that. He realizes he needs some real advice, so he meets up with Shoma and Koharu. After gushing over how perfect Mizuba is, Shoma wonders what the problem is since they aren't actually related. But Keiki insists that he can't stop seeing her as his younger sister. Koharu tells him that she's a fan of the forbidden sibling trope, which actually says a lot. Shoma asks what he's planning to do now that he's homeless, mentioning that his place is off limits since his cousin is staying over. Koharu immediately offers her house instead, but the look of death Shoma gives him is enough to get him to decline. Later, Mao finds him sitting alone, starving, so she offers him some bread and juice and asks what's wrong. Keiki tells her it's something with Mizuba, and she immediately assumes he's done something cultured like stealing her underwear. When Keiki tells her he's not that messed up, she tells him that siblings always fight and are bound to come around. Ironically, she tells him how popular she is with the boys, and though many have approached her, she hasn't said yes to anyone. This isn't particularly helpful information, but she tells him to hang in there and leaves, wondering why she's helping the guy. Meanwhile, Mizuba can't stop thinking about Keiki and is not sure what to do. In the same vein, Keiki continues to think, even remembering his conversation with his dad, who's still called Mizuba family, even if she's not related by blood. However, it begins to rain, so Mizuba goes out to look for Keiki, but when she can't find him anywhere, she returns home to cook. While she waits, Keiki returns with a fever from the rain, so she puts him in bed and goes off to cook for him. He dozes off, but when he comes to, he sees Sayuki by his side, and she says she heard about his cold from Mizuba. She offers to take care of him and crawls in beside him, but before he knows it, she's asleep. Mizuba returns with his food, and he tries to clear the misunderstanding, but she wonders how he keeps getting in such situations. Later, Yuka appears with a few get-well-soon gifts, including the gift of getting rid of Sayuki. Sayuki asks what she's doing there, and Yuka reminds her that it was her idea to ambush him while he's weak and defenseless. Sayuki denies the allegations, and the two are fighting over him in no time, so Mizuba shows up and kicks them out. That night, Keiki finally remembers the first time they met and how he promised to be her older brother. With this, he goes to find her, and though he walks in on her naked, he apologizes and stays on the other side of the door. There he asks why she even likes him, and she confesses that when they met, she had just lost people she loved, and that he promised to be her family, which was enough for her. They hug it out, and though she's not giving up, he intends to continue being her older brother. After that, everything goes back to normal, until one day, Mizuba proposes he go on a date with her just once, and he surprisingly accepts and feels excited. Summer just began, and he has a lot of time to change his mind. Can you get down with your unrelated sister? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you guys in the next video.